Hello everybody and welcome along to IMSA Radio. Lovely to have your company. It's John Hindhaugh in the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre as we're getting ready for, well, a once in a decades occurrence. Back on the 1st of April, no sniggering at the back there, 2000, it was no fooling around as the American Le Mans Series was at what was then called Lowe's, the Lowe's Motor Speedway, now Charlotte Motor Speedway, for the American Le Mans Series. And we used a version of the oval with the infield track on it as well. So that was then, and this is now subbing rather nicely for Connecticut and the Lime Rock Park event, which would have been a GT-only event. We have the two GT classes here as well as we're getting ready to go qualifying. We'll bring our sound and vision together for you in a few moments' time as we gather together the biggest endurance racing audience this weekend as we're going qualifying for the IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship, live on IMSA Radio and IMSA TV. Let's welcome straight away my cohorts, partners in crime, if you will. Our VP Racing Fuel Pit and Paddock reporter is Shea Adam. Hello, Shea Adam.
Hello, John. It's a lovely day for some motor racing, and there's going to be a lot of it today from Charlotte Motor Speedway. But to kick things off first, we've got qualifying for GTD. And a couple of big stories before we get into this qualifying session. We've had 2 red flags through 2 practice sessions. The first red flag was in the practice session last night. It was dry for the beginning and then some mixed conditions. Michael De Quesada, who is filling in for Frankie Montecalvo, who Frankie and Paige are getting married this weekend, so congratulations to both of them. But Michael De Quesada, getting up to speed, met the wall on the outside of turn 8, which is as you come back out of the infield onto the banking. He did some livery changes to the outside of that car, but no harm, no foul. It was out in practice this morning and everything was good. This morning's practice, however, we did have a second red flag for another car in GTD going out for qualifying. It's a number 22 Gradient Racing Acura. The right front tire parted ways with the car when Mark Miller had come out of the pit lane, so that car needed some help getting back. It was toward the end of the session anyway, so they were able to recover, and that car is on the pit apron, ready to go out for qualifying.
Jeremy Shaw joins me, John Hindhaugh in the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre. JS, first of all, how are you, Mr. Shaw?
Well, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, thoroughly enjoying what should be a very entertaining day only at Charlotte Motor Speedway. This is a really interesting racetrack. All the drivers describe it as kind of a street track on steroids. It's really, really tight, but it's got a very good flow to it. All the drivers seem to be pretty happy out there with the track layout, but it's certainly going to be difficult to pass. It's also I believe pretty hard on tyres as well, but that is going to depend on the conditions. As Shay was saying, yesterday's session was pretty much run in a kind of a light drizzle pretty much all the way through. This morning was wet for most of the session, then drying out towards the end. So they've had some changeable conditions so far. And of course, tonight's race is going to be held under the lights. We're in daytime now. It's not super hot out there, so I think the temperature probably won't change an awful lot between now and tonight, but certainly going to be different conditions when we get ready for the race.
We have just gone green, and if you're new to this IMSA qualifying, it's 15 minutes and done. So get out, get it done, get your position sorted on the grid. You'll probably see these GT cars head out and stay out for the whole of the session, unless they do something that is really exceptional, and then they can park the car, put their feet up and have a cup of warming cocoa before they pull themselves back together for this evening. So 12 cars here, 6 in the GT Le Mans. Think of this like we have had past at Long Beach, actually. Jeremy was talking about this circuit being a little like a road circuit on or a street circuit on steroids. Well, in the past, we have restricted the numbers at these types of circuits to give us extra racing and fewer yellow flags. And in fact, the similarity with Long Beach goes beyond that to also the amount of time. This is a 100-minute race later this evening. And again, if you're new to this, or if you're at the track, in the paddock or roundabout listening in, then we don't stop for weather here. There are treaded tyres, just like you'll have in the Xfinity and the Cup here this weekend. These cars are used to running in all conditions, so already have the windscreen wipers that the Cup cars and the Xfinity cars will get this weekend in case it is required. But this counts as effectively a road track, so this is no different to if we were at Road America, Road Atlanta, WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. That is how this will work. So the only reason we will stop for bad weather is if the weather is too difficult for the cars to actually circulate, or of course if there is lightning in the area. Shay, can we go through some of the qualifying drivers, please, in the GT Daytona category, which runs, by the way, if you're not familiar, again, to the GT3 formula.
12 cars running this weekend and 12 cars out on track right now. In numerical order, it is Michael De Quesada behind the wheel of the number 12 Lexus, his first sprint race of the season, and Aaron Telitz, the driver who is chasing in the championship solo because he is now ahead of his co-driver, Aaron Telitz, in the 14 Lexus. The 16 Porsche for Wright Motorsports is Ryan Hardwick, and in the 22 Acura, the other car that had a little bit of missed brief earlier in the day, that is Till Bechtelsheimer. It's Ian James in the Heart of Racing Aston Martin, the number 23, and Rob Ferriol in the number 30 Audi for Hardpoint Racing. John Potter is once again doing qualifying duties for the GRT Magnus Lamborghini, whereas Misha Koikberg is the driver of the number 57 Acura for Heinricher Racing. The team car to that is the 86. That is Matt McMurray, championship leader coming into the race this weekend. In the number 76, now this is a change because Compass Racing has had Corey Fergus alongside Paul Holton all year. Corey unable to participate in the races for the remainder of the season because his wife is expecting and he's not leaving her side. So it is Jeff Kingsley, the young Canadian, who is getting his first WeatherTech Championship start and his first WeatherTech Championship qualifying session. And finally, last but certainly not least, for Turner Motorsports and their BMW, it is once again Robbie Foley.
Live in sound and vision, IMSA Radio, IMSA TV together. Depending on who you talk to, how you count, and which track map you look at, we could have anything between 10 or 17 corners on this circuit. Speedway 1, 2, 3 and 4 are all used. There's an infield hammerhead is what I'm going to call it. Dropping into that is quite tricky through turn 1. The pink and black AutoNation second position car at the moment is Matt McMurray for Meyershank Racing. That's on the front stretch at the moment, so it has come through the front chicane and will into the front chicane now rather, and then we'll dive to the infield. With a bit of luck, we can talk you through this lap if he stays out, and he has done. So right up to the wall, past the starter stand, and then diving onto the infield sweeper and through into turn 2, which goes to the pit exit, then into what I'm calling the hammerhead, underneath the bridge and through the right-hander at turn 3, right across the curb and off the track at 4, but that doesn't seem to matter. Nobody's worried about that. The edge of the track is the grass there. Turn 4, and on the infield back straight, a short shoot down towards turn 5, still in this hammerhead area before you drop through, climbing up the hill just a little bit through turn 7, through the transition of turn 8 and back onto the speedway, and that's effectively speedway turn 1. You run into speedway 2, and then you've got the back straight chicane, which IMSA are calling turn 9 this weekend. Jeremy Shaw.
Yeah, John, and for a street circuit, quote unquote, sort of a street circuit, it's pretty fast.
Yes.
Some of those corners, I mean, that corner coming off after the start finish line, turn 1, that's a third gear corner taking around about 80 miles an hour. Just a kind of a dab of the brakes having coming out of that tight chicane, which is probably the slowest corner on the track, not quite as slow as one on the back straight, but almost. They're going through there about 65 miles an hour. So yeah, some of those corners in that hammerhead section are all pretty quick, all sort of 80 or 100 mile an hour corners. So it is quite fast out there. And as you say, yeah, there's obviously clearly no problem with track limits on that back section. but it's a tricky part of the racetrack, and I think that could be kind of a danger point going into the race if people, particularly GTLM cars, may be trying to make a pass on some of the GTDs.
So let's have a look at some of the times then. Ryan Hardwick for Wright Motorsports BMW, the number 16 car, has put the first fastest lap down, 1:18.232, 1:18.259 last time around, so he's in the same sort of area, 1:18.258. Wright Porsche at Wright Motorsports 911 GT3R, and a bit of a drop for the 6th place car, and that looks to me like the 57. Yes, it is the 57, and there's a bit of damage on the right rear of that car, and that was coming through, coming onto the infield section. Is that where that is?
I think it's lost it out of turn 7, did he?
Red flag. Well, we need to have 12 minutes of running, and we haven't yet, so the clock will not stop. Well, it has stopped. Okay. No, okay, fine. I paused for a moment then. It looks like we've got that car pointing back in the right direction for Misha Goldberg. A little bit of right rear damage. Most of that will polish out. It really will. And we'll be back racing very, very quick indeed. And yeah, 7 to 8. Good spot, Jeremy. It's a little bit of tyre rub on the right rear Michelin there. Hello to you all who are at the track and can hear us on the PA system, and thanks to Tyler Norling and everybody involved at Charlotte for getting us on the PA there as well. Just coming over the top of there is a change in elevation, quite pronounced change in elevation. Quite a lot of dirt was moved on the infield to get that. And just coming over the top of the rise from 7, it's quite a pronounced downhill section. And just seemed to lose the back end of the car for Misha. And in fact, it looks like there might be a right rear puncture on that as well, or certainly some wheel damage where he's clipped the wall. If he clipped that as he turned in, Jeremy, actually clipped the wall on the right-hand side when he turned in, going down from 7 to turn 8? Or was that even maybe broken suspension?
It's conceivably could have clipped the wall, I guess, in turn 6 before that. The kind of the last of the right-handers.
Oh yeah, it was gone.
I don't know, but no, maybe he just spun it, I think, over that little crest as you were talking about it, which is going into turn 7.
But there's definitely damage behind the right rear wheel, so he's hit something somewhere, and as the car was unsettled over 7, as Jeremy described there, heading down towards the transition turn 8, back onto the high banks, or the banking. Now they can't do any work on that car, it is qualifying, so this is what's called parc fermé. So that's done. Day is done for them, and they will lose their fastest lap share, Adam.
Correct. And one other interesting thing is the crew members can walk out to assess the car visually. They just can't touch it. They will have already forfeited the fastest lap by causing the red flag. So I don't actually think there's any harm in them doing work on it on the pit lane, because they're already going to be sent to the back with this penalty in effect. But the other thing, I'm not showing the 3rd place car, the Wright Motorsport Porsche, as having actually come into the pit lane during that red flag. So I'm going to have to get eyes on it to confirm that it did come in, because otherwise that would be a penalty for them as well. They did not.
Right. Okay. So that is going to be a penalty as well for that right car. In it comes now into the pit lane with 4:44 going, and that needs to be, we need to get going relatively quickly. What did I say it was? 7 minutes, just over 7. We're going to struggle, I think, to get the amount of time in. We've seen it in the past that where IMSA has been able to, we've been able to. Well, hang on a second.
Yeah, I don't think there's any problem with the schedule this afternoon, so they should be able to extend a couple of minutes if they need to. I mean,
I don't think they need to, because we seem to still be under green flag. Or we're back to green flag.
Correct.
Yeah, we're back to green, yeah.
Well, that was really quick.
We should be
okay,
fine.
so we should be fine. Yeah.
So
well done, IMSA.
Get there. Ryan Hardwick couldn't even get that car back again. But incidentally, we talked about him being quickest 3 or 4 laps into the session. He was just pipped before the red flag came out by Aaron Thielitz, who went fastest in number 14, Aim Vassar Sullivan Lexus, at 1:18.0. The quickest time of the 2 sessions we've had so far was a 17.6 that was set actually yesterday. The GTD cars this morning weren't out for the final 15 minutes of the session because that was just for GT11s, and that was when the track was at its best this morning. So the fastest time in GTD was set yesterday in the first session by Mario Farnbacher in the sister Acura, kind of at 86. Just another quick note, by the way, where I talk about the qualifying drivers here. It's in GTD, actually the only car that has a choice in terms of which driver will qualify is number 23 Harter Racing Team Aston Martin, because that's the only car in the field that has a silver ranking, a pair of silver rated drivers. Everybody else has a combination of drivers, but one of them at least is either a gold or platinum, and neither the gold or platinum is eligible to qualify the car. But number 14 car, number 12 car, which we talked about a little earlier on with Michael De Quesada driving, he is driving this weekend in his first sprint race of the season, as Shea Adam pointed out, because Frankie Montecalvo is absent this weekend. He's got a good reason, however. He's getting married to Paige, so congratulations to Paige and Frankie. And they've already delayed their wedding at least once, if not twice. And I think Frankie decided probably asking for another delay in the wedding probably wasn't really going to get down very well. So that's why Frankie Montecalvo is not here this weekend. So we wish them well, and we'll see Frankie back in action in a week's time at Petit Le Mans.
No reason they couldn't have got married at the racetrack. That's what I did. If you're going to get married in the season, get married to a race, and marry a racer. Get married when you know where they're going to be. That's the easiest thing to do. Although in fairness, this year's schedule's been a bit difficult. Update on the number 16 from Shea Adam, our VP Racing Fuel Pit and Paddock reporter.
Ryan Hardwick's in a little bit of trouble. He took the red flag twice, in effect. He continued to circulate when he should have come into the pit lane. So race control issued a 5-minute hold penalty that's being assessed right now because there was roughly 5 minutes to go when the green flag came out. So it won't affect the race, but it means that they don't get an opportunity to go back out and try and set a better time. Hardwick currently sitting 3rd on the charts. That would be his best qualifying effort of the year.
That's interesting, because on my race control I've got a 5-minute hold to the start of the next session. If we could start the race, that would really hurt them, because that would be about a 4-lap penalty. You can have a penalty that's assessed on the start of the next session, but Shea has confirmed with IMSA officials. Down to the last 60 seconds. Aaron Thielitz for Aim Vassar Sullivan. The Lexus have been strong here this weekend. Jeremy Shaw.
Yeah, they've been strong everywhere, haven't they? They've been pegged back a little bit on the balance of performance over the last few events. No major changes coming into this weekend, however. Really, I think the only change in GTD was to the Ferrari, which is not even here this weekend, because Cooper McNeil once again has decided that his Ferrari Challenge commitments to take precedence over his WeatherTech SportsCar Championship. GTD Ferrari, which is kind of interesting, so he's at Sebring this weekend, so no Ferrari here. Otherwise, balance performance is the same. But you're right, the Lexus have been strong, and Aaron Thielitz already got a couple of poles under his belt this year. Wants to add a 3rd one right here.
Jeremy Shaw, he's with me, John Hindhaugh, in the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre. Shea Adam, our VP Racing Fuel Pit and Paddock reporter, as the time expires, and through goes the Turner BMW to complete a lap, just coming through the front straight chicane, the back straight chicane rather, at the moment. Checker is out, and Matt McMurray is the car that sees the checker first for Meyershank Racing. He'll be no better than 3rd. That is his best lap, 1:18 flat. We've got 3 cars within 0.30 of a second, and 4 cars within a 10th at the moment. That's how tight it is. And the Lexus of Aaron Thielitz, right to the wall as he goes through the stripe. And I think he may have brushed the wall on the right-hand side. He blows it apart by going a 10th quicker than anybody else. And that is huge. Big spin down at the back straight chicane, and that's massively messed up the lap for Jeff Kingsley. You know that, in fact, they'd just gone through. He'd already taken, I think the 76 had already taken the checkered flag for McLaren, and that was that one of the Audis that spun right in front of them?
Yeah, with an
car?
assist.
With an assist.
Yeah, no, it was the McLaren came flying off the banking on the outside line, tried to cut inside the Audi going into that chicane, and Rob Ferrell wasn't going to back off. He was on his final qualifying lap, so he wasn't going to back off. Unfortunately for him, neither was Jeff Kingsley in third position. So Jeff Kingsley will cross the line in. Actually, well, he didn't improve on that last time, so he's shown us third in the moment, but I'd be surprised if there isn't a penalty handed out here, because that was a pretty silly move by Jeff Kingsley, not the sort of thing you need to do on your final lap of qualifying. You know, even if Rob Ferrell got out of the way, which he wasn't obliged to do, then Jeff Kingsley probably wasn't going to improve his time in any case. So I think that was an unnecessary instance. I'd be surprised if that doesn't come up before the beep in race control.
So 0.123 of a second between first and second, and then the next three cars within round about a tenth and a half, which is Matt McMurray, Jeff Kingsley and Ryan Hardwick, who holds on to fifth position despite that penalty for taking the red flag twice. Then it's Gar Robinson, another good qualifying from Gar Robinson, only half a second away from pole position. With due respect to Gar Robinson, Jeremy Shaw, he's not got the same kind of experience or indeed youth on his side as, say, some of the drivers ahead of him, certainly not as the pole sitter Aaron Teelitz.
No, that was a really good run there by Gar. His best finish before this was a fifth place. He was a fifth on the grid at Road America, but certainly this is his second best qualifying effort, and as I say, I think he might end up being fifth if there is a penalty to Jeff Kingsley. Isn't it funny how that Compass Racing McLaren seems to have been in the wars these last couple of races?
Coming to the line, I really thought Teelitz had brushed the wall, and now I'm sure he brushed the wall, and he's got a nice white, well, Charlotte stripe, not a Darlington stripe, on the right-hand side. Didn't quite rub the Michelin decals off the right-hand side tyres, but the Bumblebee decals on the right-hand side of that car, on its wheel arches, on the fenders at least, have been just taken back a millimetre or two. Sure, he would have got another lap out of that, because there is a bit of damage to the right front fender. Well, it has been a good year for Lexus, Jeremy, and they've worked very hard to get this car competitive, and it's been certainly very competitive this year, and that's another pole position for Ian Vasser-Sullivan.
Yeah, that's right. To the I think the fourth pole of the season for Ian Vasser-Sullivan in that Lexus team. So yeah, another really good run for them. It's just Aaron's third pole position from Rice Lake in Wisconsin. Northern Wisconsin is the youngster, 28 years of age, and that was a fine lap that Aaron put together. He was already quickest before that final lap, but he just squeezed a little bit more out of it just to make that pole position a little bit more convincing by just over a tenth of a second rather than just a few hundredths.
Yeah, and really should be taking the pictures from the right hand side of the car just to show the,
how
the
much
slight rub on the wall, because he just used the safer. I wonder if the safer barrier just gave him a little bit of spring there, a bit of forward push off the side, because he was very close to it indeed. In fact, he'd rub up against it. So Lexus, BMW, Acura, McLaren, Porsche, Mercedes in the top six, and those six, Jeremy, separated by just over half a second. And for those that don't know, that is GT Daytona racing encapsulated right there in the first three rows.
Yeah, brilliant, isn't it? Super tight there, and I think it bodes well for the race. I think a good job also by Ian James. He's ninth in the Aston Martin, just ahead of John Potter, Rob Ferriol in 11th position, and Misha Goikhberg, of course, bringing up the rear, having had that incident midway through that qualifying session. Yeah,
Rob Ferriol for Team Hardpoint, the Audi. With a new sponsor this weekend, Audi Tyre. People who...
Bechtelsheimer's best as well, 7th position.
Yeah, very good point for Gradient. And he'll be delighted, less than 8 tenths of a second, 3/4 of a second away. And as I say, Hardpoint with a new tyre, with a new sponsor this year, Audi Tyre. And service, they are the best people. They know your Audi. If you have 4 rings, then you should be checking those guys out. And they're in, I believe, for the rest of the season as well. So welcome to them. Nice always to have new people supporting motor racing. Next up, it's those cars, big brothers and sisters. These are the GT Le Mans cars, running to the same regulations as what in Europe and in the World Championship are called GTE. These are, in some ways, I suppose now, and with the demise of DTM, I suppose you would probably say the ultimate GT cars would be vying between these and the Japanese Super GTs. And these cars are entered by the manufacturers, generally speaking, and with manufacturers or works drivers in the seat. Shea Adam, who have you got qualifying for us?
We have, first off, welcome back to the Porsches, because they did miss the last round of the championship at Mid-Ohio. And it's a very exciting thing to see the new 991 RSR 19, because there's not enough 9s and 1s in that name. So we've got Lawrence Vantor back in the number 912. He is doing the qualifying duties once again. And for the 911, well, this is an oval track. We know that one of the 911 drivers, Nick Tandy, loves ovals. He loves NASCAR. He loves stock cars. But it's Fred Macavecchi who's doing the qualifying for car number 911. Yes, which means that Tandy gets to bring it to the checkers. So that's pretty fun, too. In the 2 Corvettes. Now, we have to spend a little bit of time thinking about these 2 cars, because it's been the strategy of the championship leading number 3 to qualify with Jordan Taylor and to have Antonio Garcia bring it to the checkered flag. That's what they're doing again today. But for the 4 car, it is Oliver Gavin making his 200th race start for Corvette Racing. He is getting to do the qualifying duties today for the silver Corvette. So Ollie looking to try and put it on pole at another oval. He's done it at Daytona a couple of times before. Let's see if he can do it here at Charlotte. And the final 2 cars in black, we have the number 24 BMW, and in red we have the 25. In the 24, it's Jesse Krohn, the Finnish superstar, who's going out there to try and claim another pole. And for the sister car, well, that's the big mystery. I don't actually know if it's local hometown hero Connor DeFilippi, and it is. Thank you very much to Keith and everybody up in Charlotte for giving me the in-car video. That's Connor trying to get a pole position at his home track. Both he and John Edwards, co-driver of the 24 BMW, they call Charlotte home now. They live just up the street, so it's not a situation where they have to fly to the racetrack. But let's see if Connor can go flying around this track.
Looks like we might just beat the weather this afternoon as well for this part of qualifying. It is closing in at Charlotte Motor Speedway. IMSA Radio and IMSA TV together. Jeremy Shaw and John Hindhaugh in the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre. Just heading off to the north and west of us. So on the right side of I-85. And it looks like the worst of it is going to miss us. What happens later on this evening when we go to green flag conditions, which is later on tonight, we don't know at the moment. But we keep our fingers crossed, because Mother Nature has not necessarily been kind to us this year. Although, in fairness, 4th of July weekend on a Roval at Daytona, of course, Jeremy, we got pushed back a little bit. We got pushed back into the under the lights there, and actually it was a fantastic event and finished under the lights in darkness. We had full fireworks and America's sports car on America's Day winning at America's racetrack. So that one was pretty good for the script writers.
Kind of cool, wasn't it? Yeah, it certainly was. And I think, you know, we're certainly in for some excitement this evening as well. The weather could throw a bit of a spanner in the works, but hopefully not. And I think, you know, at least the teams and drivers have got some experience in perhaps not full wet conditions, but certainly very damp conditions, I think, earlier in the practice session this morning as well. So I'm sure they're ready for just about everything. It's going to be an interesting session. It's a shame, I think, in some ways that Tommy Milner isn't qualifying the number 4 car, but it's great to see Ollie certainly getting his opportunity here, because Tommy Milner, I think only he and Bruno Spengler are the 2 drivers in the GT11 field who have not yet got a pole position to their credit. And Tommy Milner, he was quickest this morning in the practice session, so I'm sure he was looking forward to having a shot at the pole. But it will be Oliver Gavin, and this is going to be a super interesting session, because there's been absolutely nothing to choose between the 6 cars in GT11 in each of the first 2 practice sessions.
So this again, expect to see a full 15 minutes, and the usual script is Corvettes go out first, Porsches then wait a bit and go out second, and then BMWs wait the longest and go out third. And the reasoning for that is they all have slightly different characteristics as how they warm up their Michelin slick racing rubber and get them up to operating temperature and pressures. But what we tend to see is them staying out for the whole 15 minutes and building up. So as they burn the VP Racing fuels down, the car gets lighter, the cars get quicker. 21st century old-fashioned qualifying. Been like this in IMSA for a wee while. It works very well indeed, Jeremy.
Yeah, you're right, John, except this track we're hearing is pretty hard on the tyres, and it's dry out there now. I think we should see some, I think it's pretty much dry. It's still perhaps a little bit of dampness in the air, but it is fairly hard on tyres, so it'll be interesting to see whether, like usual, the cars do stay there out there for the entire 15 minutes of this session. We will find out fairly shortly, won't we?
Sure.
All 3 of the GTLM manufacturers did manage to get test days here at Charlotte Motor Speedway. The Porsches actually kind of wish they didn't, because both of their chassis wound up with some pretty significant damage, one more so than the other. But in terms of BMW and Corvette, they both came out of this weekend with such amazement at the grip levels of the track. Corvette in particular, talking about the high G loads that they're experiencing, and during the long runs, there were some sore necks. So there was a lot more simulator work that went on afterwards, and a lot more gym work by those guys to try and get ready for this race, because even though it's 100 minutes, it's going to be exhausting due to the level of grip out there.
Well, you're changing direction so often in the midfield. If you look at the hammerhead area, it looks like, okay, straight, turn, It's not really. It's turn, and up, then turn again. You're not really keeping the wheel straight on that car very, very long at all. Out onto the banking, onto speedways 1 and 2 for Ollie Gavin on his first flying lap. Jordan Taylor in the yellow Corvette is his teammate, and he's out behind him. Across the line for Ollie Gavin, 1:16.6, Jeremy. How does that compare to what we've seen this week already?
Fastest time this morning was a 1:14.935 by Tommy Miller. Yesterday's fastest time was set by Jesse Krohn at 1:15.4, so that was drying out towards the end yesterday. I think still not completely dry. So I don't know whether it was. I think even this morning the driver was saying it's still pretty damp out there towards the end of the session, but it's certainly getting faster in the closing minutes. So we'll certainly be down into the 14s at worst, I would suggest.
Ollie Gavin blocked by the 911. Fred McAfee, who's just out of the pits and just had to work his way through as he heads back onto the infield through turn 1. And McAfee locks up the inside front. Oh, he's got suspension damage. That's the 912, in fact. The 912, it's Vanto. Suspension damage on the right rear. Pitched sideways. Second place car in the qualifying, and that's done. He's rubbed the wall. And the suspension and wheel damage there from Lawrence Vanto. And this could cause a yellow flag. So he got a big sideways moment as he was coming out of the infield and clobbered the wall right hand side, right over the top of the brow again, just where we saw the problem earlier on between 7 and 8, and just going over the top of the brow there, out of the hammerhead and into the transition, back into the car, stepping away. It's a game of inches. Anybody who's been on iRacing has done that. They've all done that. Normally, actually, you don't get away with it quite as lightly as that, because you think you've caught it and then it snaps back and then your nose in. I've got it, I don't got it. And the front end of the car. Sadly for Fred McAfee, Control-Alt-Delete. It's not an option here. He can't quit back to the pits and restart. The red flag is out, so both the GT sessions, they have been interrupted by a red flag. This one I don't think will be as quick to be sorted as we saw last time. On the curb, coming out of the, on the curb on the left-hand side to start with, unsettled the car, coming into 7, and then through 7, the car's already offline and struggling and gets a little bit of a wiggle over the brow, and at that point the right rear is heading towards the wall and actually took the right rear end plate off the wing as well. Just maybe the tiniest bit too much of curb on the inside of turn 7, as the very experienced Laurens Vanthoor will be disappointed with himself. He's explaining to the IMSA safety crew there, the AMR IMSA safety crew, what is going on. Shea Adam has news about that chassis. It's been in the wars here in this VP Racing Fuels Pit and Paddock update.
Well, as I mentioned briefly in the rundown of who was going out for qualifiers, both of the Porsches wound up in the wall at varying degrees over the test that they had at Charlotte Motor Speedway. It was the 912 that suffered the brunt of the damage, though, with actually the chassis being damaged. The 911 did also get into the wall. All of it was in the hands of the same driver, though. It was not Makoviecki or Tandy who was able to get to the test, or was it Laurens Vanthoor? It was all Earl Bamber who was driving during that test. So that poor 912 knows the walls around Charlotte Motor Speedway fairly well, but it's very unusual for a driver like Laurens Vanthoor to make a mistake, especially when there are walls concerned. He's a former Macau GP winner. He's very good in tight spaces.
Hang on. The last time he won Macau, he crossed the finish line. It was for a previous manufacturer. He crossed the finish line to win that race with all 4 wheels not touching the ground. Now, interestingly, it wasn't because there's some kind of inconsistency in the pavement there. He was on his roof. So, yes, he is very good at confined spaces, but he does like to push the envelope just a little bit. I think he won from his now teammate, Earl Bamber, actually, who was coming up behind him in a Porsche at that Macau GT event, from memory.
Can I bail him out a little bit more with a better example?
Too late.
He won Long Beach last year.
Okay, there you go. Well done. Why didn't you lead with that? You buried the lead. Jeremy.
But Earl Bamber crashed twice in the test in 2 different cars. That doesn't happen very often.
No. Well, it goes to show, lady and gentlemen, and dear viewer and listener, that this place should not be underestimated. You look at it on paper and you think, all right, 10, 11, 12, however many corners it actually is. IMSA say there are 10 turns here, 10 corners here, and you think, well, that doesn't look too hard. Yeah, okay. So it's left, left, right, 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 left, 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 right, left, and right, left. That can't be that bad. Yes, but you don't drive on paper, do you? And there's some quite tricky that the movement of the earth in the infield to create those different levels that we have has created, Jeremy, quite an interesting set of cambers, the rise and fall of the road, just upsetting some of these GT cars. And you see it as well, even with the softly sprung Cup cars and Xfinity cars, that they are a handful around here, and that is what a number of circuit designers would call mistake-inducing features, and I love it.
I agree with you, absolutely right. I mean, it's a quick track here. The average speed, even in the damp that we've had so far, is over 111.5 miles an hour. So that's pretty quick for a couple of mile track. With 10 or 17 or however many corners you want to count. So it is, and it's obviously clearly very unforgiving as well. And as Shay was saying, it's physically very demanding on these drivers. It's a lot more physical than I think most people had anticipated before they came here for the test and then coming into the race weekend.
Just noted by Alan Prosser. Thank you, Alan, king of the screen grab. At IMSA Radio, by the way, if you want to get in touch with us here in the Haggerty Global Broadcast Centre. It was the catch fence above the wall that took the wing end plate off. That's how far over Laurens Vanthoor was. Keep an eye on the clock. We may see a couple of minutes just put back onto there to give us the 12, because we have got a little bit of time. It does mean that Vanthoor is going to lose his best lap, which had Not happened, yes, as well. I was just getting to that. Thank you, Shea, for bailing me out there. The cogs were turning rather slower than they should have been.
That's all right. We are back to green flag, though, with 4 minutes to go. So let's see if everybody leaves the pit lane. This could be an unusual qualifying session now, John.
This could be the equivalent of a green-white checker. You might get two runs at this. What we're doing, 1 minute 15. Can't afford to be slow on your out lap here. You might get two flying laps here. Remember, when the checkered flag falls, if you are on a lap, even if you've just gone through the stripe and heading to turn one, that lap will count. So they're back out on the circuit at 1:15.067 by Ollie Gavin in his 200th start for Corvette Racing. The fastest sports car driver in his home village in Northampton. Yardley Hastings, finest.
Well, there might be somebody tucked under the woodwork that we haven't seen in a racing car yet. They might.
Well, okay, he's the fastest.
No, you're absolutely right.
Fastest Corvette driver in Yardley Hastings, I think we can see it.
And he was the only one who laid down a representative time, wasn't he? Before we had the red flag out. Now, just going back to the average speed around here, if we compare this racetrack to somewhere like Long Beach, the average speed for GTLM cars around there is 90, 92 miles an hour thereabouts. Raceway on Belle Isle in Detroit, GTLM cars don't go there, but the prototypes, their average lap speed around Belle Isle is 106 miles an hour. Well, as I said this morning, the average speed here 111. So this is a quick track.
And we think Belle Isle's a quick track, Jeremy. When they're charging towards our commentary point, just after the kink towards the start-finish line, that looks pretty quick to me. I've got to tell you that. By the way, I misspoke earlier on. It's the loss of two fastest laps for causing a stoppage during qualifying. So both the 912 and the GT Daytona that stopped the clock earlier on will be losing their two fastest laps. In terms of the Porsche, it's not going to make that much difference because they haven't put a fastest lap in. But just to clear that one up, and my apologies for that, it hasn't made a difference, I don't think, to Misha Goikberg either. He will start 12th of 12 GT Daytona cars as well. But I know people like us to have the right information, so I've passed it on, and that was before anybody tweeted at IMSA Radio, by the way. I actually just read my race control channel, which I was too busy watching the action on the track. 2.5 minutes to go, and up to the top, it's a Corvette, but it's not Ollie Gavin, it's Jordan Taylor. Gets down to a 14.4, so 0.6 better than his teammate, running right out to the wall through the inward infield sweeper and round through turn 2, now into the hammerhead, running across the back between turns 5 and 6. Really get through this infield very quickly indeed. Over the brow, turn 6, dropping down through 7 towards the scene of the Vantor crime, and now through the transition into 8 and on to the speedway. Through speedway turn 1. I'd like to see him slightly closer to the blue line there, but they must feel that they know what they're doing. Right up to the wall before the back chicane. IMSA are calling this complex turn 9, all of it. Getting very close to the wall on the exit, and on to speedway turn 4. This is another good lap for Jordan Taylor. Jesse Kron's coming in at a 16.5 for BMW, 16.6 for Spengler, and Fred Makovecki has just come out. Across the line, Jordan Taylor a 14.2, Jeremy Shaw. 14.2, so over 112 miles an hour average speed for that Corvette. Remember, this is a mid-engine Corvette. If you haven't been keeping up with things, the C8R, all right up to the wall by the BMW number 24 of Jesse Kron, going through turn 1 into turn 2. Very close indeed. Almost wiped off part of the paintwork there. Back to the Corvettes. If you haven't been keeping up with things, Corvettes have switched to a mid-engine car, the C8, and therefore the race car that's built from the street car. The C8R has the engine behind the driver. Fred Makovecki's first time is so close to pole position. just 0.056 of a second, less than a mile an hour away from Jordan Taylor. Taylor with a 14.2, 14.334 for Fred Makowiecki. My goodness me, Jeremy. With 10 seconds left to go, Makowiecki's putting in a good charge here.
This is good stuff, isn't it? This is nothing to choose between the Chevy and the Porsche at this stage. 0.056 of a second. Jordan Taylor there does improve, doesn't he? But
no, he's
brought into the pits. Beg your pardon, into the pits. That's unusual, doesn't it? We normally see the Corvettes out there right to the bitter end. But no improvement there for Jesse Krohn in 4th position.
How has Nick Tandy not been allowed to qualify here? There's something going on. Remember, he's done the demo at Talladega in the Coca-Cola Porsche after Petit Le Mans last year. Across the line through the checker, and Makowiecki does not improve on his next lap. So it will be a 0.056 advantage that puts the number 3 Chevrolet Corvette C8R from Corvette Racing and Jordan Taylor onto pole position. And what a lap that was. 1:14.278. Absolutely nailed the curbs through the final chicane and onto the front straight. Yeah, there was a good, 3 feet maybe between him and the wall there. Certainly wasn't that. There was a rub on the wall for the 24 of Jesse Krohn as he came through turn 1 onto the infield. And that BMW will need a little bit of remedial work. But certainly just a little bit of a rub there as the front fender was bent up, and it may have cost him a wee bit of time. Another Corvette pole position, Jeremy Shaw. 2020, since the resumption of racing on the 4th of July at Daytona, has almost without exception been owned by Corvette Racing.
Yeah, except Porsches are generally the ones that qualify on the pole position. There was a Corvette that was on pole last time out. This is the 3rd pole position of the season for Corvette Racing and for Oliver Gavin. But he had to work really hard for that. It was also a pole earlier this year for Oliver Gavin as well, wasn't there? So this is the 4th pole of the season for Corvette Racing. A great lap there once again by Jordan Taylor.
Jordan about to get the publicity shots taken down in the pit lane. So it's Corvette, Porsche, BMW, BMW, Corvette, Porsche is how they stand, with the 2 BMWs less than a tenth of a second between those two, 0.094. And Ollie Gavin, after setting the early pace, ends up 3/4 of a second on a relatively short track, and certainly at 74, 75 seconds, short in time from his teammate being 3/4 of a second away. So congratulations to Jordan Taylor and Corvette Racing, to Aaron Teelitz, who took the pole in GTT, for Aim Vassar-Sullivan in the Lexus. It will be 7:30 Eastern for the Michelin Countdown to Green. That's midnight 30 if you're in the US. 100 minutes of racing. Looks like it's going to be an absolute blinder at Charlotte Roval. Join us on IMSA Radio and IMSA TV.